coming. Before we get underway, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta in the Métis Region 3, which includes Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, including Chickasha, Bears Paw, and Wesley First Nation. In acknowledging the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region, we are giving recognition to the fact that this is their traditional lands, and while a shared home now, our ancestors were in fact guests and not owners. Thank you all so much for coming to tonight's presentation, the first of our second writer in residency with Simon Rose. So we're very excited. He'll be talking about writing for publication. This is, like I said, the first of 4 that will be going on. I'm not going to give a great big bio for Simon every single week because I've got a feeling a lot of us are going to be coming back week after week, but I'll give him his proper due here tonight. So Simon graduated from university with a degree in history and also is a graduate of the Institute of Children's Literature of West Reading. Simon is an instructor for adults with the University of Calgary and offers online workshops for both children and adults. He also offers a wide variety of presentations and workshops and author residency programs for schools and libraries, and he offers virtual author visits. He also offers a number of services for writers, including editing, manuscript evaluation, coaching, mentoring, and writing workshops, in addition to copyright services for business community. He's a regular presenter at conferences and festivals. He's served as a juror for the Governor General Literacy Awards for Children's Literature, the Saskatchewan Book Awards, the Parsec Awards, and the Sunburst Awards for Canadian Literature of the Fantastic. He's also the founder of the Children's Authors and Illustrators on Facebook. He managed the Calgary Children's Book Fair and Conference, served as a writer-in-residence with the Canadian Authors Association and Alberta branch, is a member of the Calgary Association of Freelance Editors, and served as an assistant regional advisor for the SCBWI Western Canada. So with all of those things listed off, you can understand why we are so excited that Simon has agreed to be our writer in residence this year. We at Airdrie Public Library are absolutely thrilled to be able to offer this again this year and to grow on how successful and all the support that we got last year. You know, we were very, very pleased to be able to do it again. And we're absolutely thrilled to be able to have Simon be the person this year. Just a couple little housekeeping things before I hand it off to Simon to start it up. It's kind of, as I mentioned earlier, you are more than welcome to ask questions by just raising your hand. You can also save it to the end of question period. Please keep your microphones on mute during the presentation, unless we've called on you to ask your question. Simon is going to, like I said, take it away. There'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions and things later. Just another reminder that this is the first of 4 presentations. So we do have another workshop next week and a reading and then another workshop. You can register for those online as well. And there still is space available for the one-on-one blue pencil sessions. So if you are interested in having a meeting with Simon to talk about your writing, by all means, feel free to register. Some people have already registered and I have reached out to them via email, but I haven't heard back. So it may be in people's spam folders. If you think that you registered, but you haven't heard from me, I'll send you, please check your spam folder. If not, then I'll give you a call shortly and then tomorrow or the next day to make sure we can hammer out dates and times. So whenever you're ready, Simon.
Oh, me? I've got to do some work? Oh, I don't know about that. Yes, good evening, everyone. Normally, of course, we'd be doing this in person. We used to. It was interesting when Eric said there that I offer all these different programs and things and workshops and things. Yes, I used to do a lot of that, of course. Like before all this began and we got locked down and everything. It was yes, I was a lot more active, I suppose, out there in the world. But these days, a lot of it's online. But fortunately, a lot of this stuff we can do online, so that's quite good. So as Eric was saying, I am an author of novels and things. I've got, actually, how many? 15 novels, I think. 15 novels plus another 3 coming out next year, hopefully. 8 guides for writers, which are not just for kids writers. They're just on a wide variety of subjects that I self-publish those. I've written about 120 non-fiction books for different publishers on a wide variety of topics. It's all on the website and everything. Editing and coaching stuff that I do is for all genres. I've done just about every single genre, I think, over the years for that kind of thing. I also do, not as often as I used to, I do a bit of corporate work and websites and very dull stuff sometimes, but it's all writing work. Currently, I'm doing stuff with the University of Calgary on 2 writing courses, and in the past, I've done stuff with Mount Royal and with Chinook Learning at the CBE and things as well. So that's I hope that's not doesn't sound too self-promotional, but I just wanted you to know what I do, just so that you know that I'm qualified, hopefully, to talk to everyone about these things this evening. We do have limited time, of course, naturally. We've only got about 45 minutes to an hour to do this, but I'm hoping, I can't cover everything about writing for publication in that amount of time, but I'm going to try and cover tonight where ideas come from, how you can turn them into a marketable venture. I'm going to be talking about novels and short stories and nonfiction. But mostly it's going to be about fiction, I think, novels and short stories. We'll be talking about the importance of planning and outlines and editing and revision, marketing yourself and submitting your work. And as I said, we are a bit limited in terms of our time, but you can. I'm doing this. I'm connected to the library for the whole month here, so you're very welcome to connect with me after this presentation for the rest of the month, and even after all this is over and done with, you're welcome to connect with me through my website or through social media and all those good things as well. So first thing we've got to talk about, I suppose, here is, where do ideas come from? Well, they come from up here, don't they? They come from our noodle. They come from our imagination. But of course, they have to get in there somewhere. They have to get into our imagination somehow. So where on earth do they come from? Well, really, from my point of view, they've come from books, of course, quite often. They've come from books, they've come from TV shows, they've come from movies. The online world is a massive source of inspiration and ideas and things as well. When I was a child and I suppose an early teenager anyway, I read an awful lot of comic books, superhero comic books and things like that, and Marvel comics especially were very, very, the storylines were very, very imaginative. These weren't just cartoon character comics. These were very good storylines and everything like that. So I was brought up on all that kind of stuff. I've got ideas from dreams before as well. I don't think I've ever got a full-blown story idea, the whole thing from a dream, but certainly dreams is a place where you'll sometimes get ideas. I don't think I have them now or not, but I used to have a little notepad next to the bed sometimes in case I had an idea that needed writing down as soon as I woke up. History is another source for me. It's not for everybody, but history for me is a great source of inspiration. I have always been interested in history. I ended up getting a degree, a university degree in history. I was going to be a history teacher at one point, but that never came to pass. I went on in different directions and things, I suppose. But so history has given me lots and lots of ideas. And also everyday life. I have had ideas whilst grocery shopping or at the drugstore or walking the dog or whatever it is that you do in your everyday life. So ideas really can come from just about anywhere. But one of the things I've noticed, and I have to mention this too, is although not all ideas may seem viable at the time, I know that in the old days, perhaps people used to keep a little notebook, a little journal or something like that with all their story, a lot of their story ideas in it and things. These days, I suppose we all, not all of us, I do anyway, I sometimes write them down, handwrite them, but then I'll put them into a file in the computer or whatever, something like that. But you never know when you might get another piece of the puzzle. This is the thing. So you never get rid of your ideas. I don't think anyway. You should never get rid of your ideas. Never throw them away. This one, for example, this is a book that came out in 2014, I think. This one. This was one of my a very early idea I had, along with all the others. It was amongst that stash of ideas I had when I was first thinking of sending things out to publishers. And what I had this wonderful idea about this character who went to the most mysterious village in England, I think it was. It had all these legends attached to it and myths and things, and it was sort of famous. And he went to this place and met someone who was from another world, and they went to a portal and went somewhere. I had no idea where they were going to go, except that I had this wonderful premise. That was it, and I had nothing at all there. And I put it to one side and didn't do anything with it at all until about 2012 or something, and I finally got interested in it myself, never mind getting a publisher interested in it. And it was the same thing too with the this one here. Another early idea was this one. This was a paranormal story, and this one again was very, very early on. I had this idea with all the other stories at the beginning. Somebody who went back in time through somebody else into a previous life. He was haunted by somebody who'd been murdered, and this person wanted him to go back and change the course of events. But again, that's all I had. I had nothing at all, and I wasn't interested enough in it myself. But once I got into that one, about again just after the other one I mentioned about the mysterious village. Once I got into that one, that ended up not only with one book, it ended up with 2 sequels as well. So I ended up with 3 books. Once I got into it myself, I became interested in it. So I didn't get rid of that idea either. The other one was this. This book as well was about somebody who had, they were getting messages from another world, that was in danger of being destroyed by environmental disaster and a deadly virus, which we didn't have in the real world at the time when I first had the idea for this, very early in my career. But again, I wasn't interested enough. But once I got into that, again, it turned into 3 books, and that was I did self-publish those in 2017, I think, and that's when they came out. And even the one that's coming out next year, which is historical fiction. It's mostly set in the time of the English Civil War, Charles I, Oliver Cromwell, all this sort of thing. I always wanted to write a story set in that time period. But again, I wasn't interested enough in it. Now, I finally got into it during the lockdown, actually, with that one. Everybody on Facebook and everything was talking about the lockdown was going to give them the chance to finally write their book. And I thought, well, do I have anything that I've actually got sitting around that's actually in good shape? And I thought about that one. I went into the file and I thought, oh, I bet this is in a real state. This is not going to be in a very good shape. Luckily, I had edited it as I'd gone along, and I hadn't looked at it for several years. And then I got into it, and I wrote that last year, and I finished it by the fall. And then somebody who is, I don't think she's biased, but a person I know who actually read it, and she said it was better than all the other ones I'd ever done. So I thought, oh, that's nice. And it's the one that hasn't come out yet. So hopefully it'll be the case. But again, I did not throw out the ideas, and I decided, well, I should do something with that. Now with the and actually I've got another one as well that I wrote this year. That was a very early idea where I just had the premise and I wasn't interested enough in it to do anything with it. And then finally, once I got into it, I've written 1 book, and I will probably add another 2 to that. But I'm putting it to one side for a while. That's something else I tend to do. It's not that I'm bored with it. It's just that I want to do something else and put it to one side for a little bit. Because that one about the Civil War, when I was doing that, I couldn't get excited about the story at all, my own book. And at one point I thought, well, why am I not interested in this book? Why am I not excited about it? And I thought about all the things that were in it, all the different elements of the story. And I thought, oh, this is actually quite good. I should probably be more excited about this. And that's what helped me to finish it. Once you've got the idea, you can't do anything without the idea, of course. I find these days that you should definitely, the next thing you should do is do some planning, do an outline for a book. Well, I wouldn't sound the best advertisement for that, because when I did my first one, this is the first book I ever had published. This one came out in 2003. And this was written probably in 2000, 2001, something like that. And I was completely new to this, as I'm sure that you all have been in the past. You've all been new to this at some point. And I just assumed that, well, I have to have the idea, and then I have to start at the beginning and I go through to the end. That's how people write things, isn't it? And so I didn't have an outline for the first book. And consequently, I know now that you should probably have a plan, because it takes a lot longer to write it if you don't have a proper plan. And when I was doing the second one, this one, which is a historical fiction time travel thing set in the Middle Ages, I started doing that exactly the same way. We just starting at the beginning, going through to the end. But I think it was because it involved a lot more historical research that I moved towards doing an outline, doing a plan. And that was much better. And I got the book written probably a lot quicker as a result of that. There's no hard and fast rules to me doing an outline, I don't think, really. But it's probably about a short paragraph for every chapter of the book, perhaps. I have been known to do character sketches and things sometimes for different novels, but not always. It's mostly the plot I'm interested in doing. Does it change as the thing's written? Yes, it does. There's no arguing there. I would say it does change as it's being written. Sometimes, as I found with the one I did this year, sometimes you introduce an entirely new character. Sometimes a character you've already got in the story is expanded. Sometimes a character diminishes in importance. And if it changes anywhere in terms of the plot, it's usually in that third quarter, perhaps, when you've got that third quarter of the plot where everything needs to start making sense so that the ending makes sense. And you've already changed a few things earlier in the plot and things as well. So I found as well, and this was the case while we've had the lockdown, and things have been very different. I found that if I had an outline for the story, I could go to a coffee shop or something like that to get away from being at home, because we're all at home so often these days. Sometimes you just need to go out somewhere just to get away from if you're at home writing like me anyway, you need to get away from the computer to get out and to somewhere where you're not shopping for groceries, or you're not walking the dog. You need to just go out and do something. And taking an outline with me, if I think, well, I need to work on chapter 16, or I need to work on this scene at the beginning or this thing at the end, I could take the outline with me, print it off on a printer anyway, and I go to a coffee shop and work on it on that way. So that's been useful for me. I wouldn't be able to do that without having an outline. So it's been good for me. It's not for everyone. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell everyone that, yes, you should definitely do an outline. It's entirely up to you, but it has helped me in the past, and I will probably always continue to do it. I've even done an outline for all the non-fiction books and things that I've written for other publishers and things as well. And anything really, I'll do an outline for. If I'm asked to do an article for a magazine on something completely unrelated to science fiction, fantasy, or fiction in general, I'll still probably do an outline and a plan. From my point of view, with the material I've been doing, research has been one of those things that's been very, very important. I do have a degree in history, and I'm very interested in history and things, but that still means I have still had to do lots of research. There's no shortcuts for me either. I have had to do, well, perhaps there are some shortcuts because I have some idea as to what the time period is like, I suppose. But with that Civil War book that's coming out, for example, I mean, yes, I know the events, I can picture what people used to wear and things like that, but there are always going to be things in a historical period that you're not as familiar with that you need to know about, like something like what sort of saddles people would use on a horse in 1647. well, you think, well, that seems rather an obscure fact, but it's something you may need to know about, and also how long it took to get from one place to the other. When you see things in movies, people seem to be able to travel very easily from one place to another on a horse, don't they? In a movie or a TV show that's set in hundreds of years ago. But I don't know much about horses. I've never owned a horse or learned how to ride a horse and things like that. And same thing with weapons too. You've got to know about weapons. And when I did stuff about the Middle Ages, I had to learn about printing. I knew when printing was invented and everything, but it was like, well, yeah, but how common were printed books? How common would they have been? Could I use them in? Because it was a crucial part of the plot. In the second book involved somebody having a printed book. I thought, well, would this person have had a printed book in this particular year? In 1483, would this have happened? So the research was very, very important. And it also will show people who are going to either, if you're submitting it to publishers or people are reviewing your book and things, it'll also show people that you're credible as an author as well. If you've not if you've not cut any corners with the historical research and everything like that. Now, this again applies to me with the books I've written in terms of the story structure. If you're going to be doing that, I've got my outline and everything and the plan. I usually like to have a nice attention-grabbing, dramatic beginning to the story, just to get people's attention. Personally, I think maybe it's because I've been writing for younger readers, I suppose, with a lot of with the fiction anyway. If you grab people's attention at the beginning, then you've got their attention. You might be able to you might have to slow the story down a little bit further into the story. You've got some very important facts to explain or a character to introduce or something like that. But you don't really want to be doing that too early on, because you're going to lose people right at the beginning. You've got to, in some ways, I've thought about it in terms of sort of TV shows and movies and things that I've seen over the years, that usually there's something at the beginning that grabs your attention and you think, oh, I'd like to see the rest of this story. I'd like to find out what happens next. So that's what I've done, really, to drag them in at the beginning with a dramatic beginning, and also keep the thing moving at a certain pace. If you have to slow it down to explain something important, then yes, maybe do that, but not too early on. And I always usually have cliffhanger endings at the end of each chapter too, to make sure that people are going to turn the page and everything as well. So that's just part of that. What else if we're writing for publication? Of course, one of the other things that's important and is a lot of work, of course, is the lovely world of editing and revision. I'm sure everyone loves to know all about that. Unfortunately, we have to do that as writers. It is very, very important. Some people prefer to wait until they like to write the whole thing, I suppose, and do it at the end. Some people do it as they go along. Some people might write a chapter of the story and edit it straight away. Do that one straight away. So it might be 2 or 3 chapters, because you're in the zone and you can write 2 or 3 chapters at once and things. And I tend to do it as I go along. I'll do it at the end as well, of course, because you have to. But I tend to edit as I'm going along usually as well. But it is very, very important to get it right. There's no cutting corners with it, really, especially if you're going to be sending it out to publishers, which we'll get to in a moment or two. But even if it is going out to, if it's going to go out to someone else who doesn't know you personally and everything, it's best to have somebody else look at your book, your writing, your story or whatever before it goes anywhere, in my opinion. Preferably somebody that, if you know someone, a family friend or a relative or whatever they may be, but somebody that's going to be honest, really. Somebody that's going to be honest and tell you, yeah, this stinks and this is no good. And they're going to be honest, or they're going to tell you honestly that they don't like a certain thing or that this doesn't work. especially that's important. Well, if you're sending it to publishers or if you're self-publishing, you do need an unbiased opinion, I think. Anyway, I always have somebody look at my stuff before it goes anywhere, that's for sure. Maybe you good people in this session, maybe you don't think you need to do that, but it's just that my recommendation would be to do that, because you do need to know if something's wrong as well as knowing if it's good, in my opinion, anyway. Now, this is we're supposed to be talking here, of course, this week about submitting things for writing for publication. So even though the publishing world has certainly changed, well, the world has changed with the pandemic and everything like that, there are still publishers out there, and you can still submit your work to traditional publishers. And it's very easy to do. It's been very easy for quite some time now to do research online into publishers, and the publisher's website will tell you obviously all the information about the type of books that they publish, the age ranges that they publish books for, if it's for kids and teenagers, the genre and everything as well. And also it'll usually tell you if they're currently accepting submissions, because they're not always. Sometimes they're full for the next 6 months and they're not accepting any submissions. Sometimes as well, a publisher's website will tell you if they accept what is known as simultaneous submissions, whereby they don't mind if you've sent something out to another publisher at the same time. Some of them will not do that. They will not accept anything. They want to they want to have the exclusive look at your book and not have it go out somewhere else. Some people do, but again, that would be on the website. They should also usually give you some idea of how long it might be before you'll hear back from them, which is I'd love to be able to tell you that there's some definitive rules on that, but they never. When I was still submitting to things into publishers, it didn't seem to be. It could be a month, very rarely. Sometimes it'd be 6 months before you'd hear anything, and sometimes you might not hear anything back at all, because these people do get a lot of submissions. Let's be honest, they do. They are very busy people. That is what I've just been saying is mostly probably for fiction. The experience I've had with fiction, non-fiction publishers like the ones I work for kids, and the same thing for adults too. They might be a little bit different in the way that they operate, in that they may have a list of topics that they're interested in. Let's say if it's like some of the people I have written books for. They might have we're going to do a series about animals. We're going to do a series of biographies of famous politicians. We're going to do something about natural disasters. We're going to do something about history and things like that. And so they may have a list of topics that they're interested in, and you'll be asked perhaps if you're interested in writing these things. I have become. I was fortunate with some of these publishers that they seem to, because of the history degree, I think maybe I did a lot of books on Canadian military history and things like that. I mean, there was a series on Canada in World War I and Canada in World War II. I wrote a series of 6 books on Canadian military history this summer for what was it? Teenagers, basically, yes, sort of, junior high type sort of age and things. And I also wrote a lot of books on Indigenous communities and things as well. That I seem to be seen as being a bit of an expert on that for a while as well. So, but I'll talk a bit more about that though in I think it's a couple of weeks' time. Yes, a couple of weeks' time we'll be doing a session on. Developing your career as a professional writer, and we'll be talking a bit more. Well, I'll be talking a bit more about the different ways that you can, write for a living, I suppose, in some ways, which is not restricted to writing a best-selling novel. And there are other ways to do that. But to go back to what we said with the submitting to publishers in the traditional way, you obviously need a cover letter. There's examples of that you can find online. You need a cover letter, a synopsis of the story, which sometimes can be difficult when you've written the thing, especially if it's a full-length novel. You've got to actually create a 1-page or a 2-page synopsis of your novel that you've just spent 2 years writing or something like that. That can be hard work sometimes to do that. The publisher might have something on their website that tells you that they want something that's so many words, or it's a page of a synopsis or something like that. I think when I've created a synopsis of a novel for a submission, it's probably been a page. It's been no more than 2, really, for a synopsis. They may sometimes ask for sample chapters from the book as well, which doesn't necessarily have to be the first chapters. It might be some very exciting chapter that's in section in chapter 4, or in your book. I don't know, but they don't always ask for sample chapters, but sometimes they do. And if all goes well, which it probably is not forced to, of course, if it all goes well, they might say, yes, I like your synopsis, I like your style of writing, I like the chapters, I'd like to see the whole thing. And then you send in the whole thing, and if they like that, they might offer you a contract to publish your book. This is if it all goes according to plan, of course, which I don't think it ever really does, or it's not guaranteed that it would go to according to plan. But the one thing that we have to be prepared for as professional writers, especially of fiction, is dealing with rejection, of course. Yes, I'm afraid we may get rejected. I know that I once did I can't remember where it was. It was at one of the universities locally, or it was when I was doing in-person classes, and I remember once mentioning this to someone about, you may get you may get rejected when you send in your book, and one of the people in the class said, I couldn't possibly send my book in to somebody to look at, if it might be rejected. I thought, well, I wasn't quite sure what to say to this particular person, because they weren't prepared to send their work in to be assessed by someone who they didn't know or anything like that. And I suppose people get rejected more often than they get accepted as well. You have to develop a thick skin, especially when you're first starting out, that's for sure. There has been some very famous authors who have been rejected. I actually have a note here from one of my classes. I think I'd forgotten who these authors were, but I've got it written down here. 14 publishers rejected the first novel in the Harry Potter series. A Wrinkle in Time had 30 rejections before it got a publisher. Lord of the Flies, 20 publishers rejected that. Stephen King's first novel was also rejected by dozens of publishers. Gone with the Wind, a very famous movie as well as a novel, 38 rejections apparently. The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter, was rejected, let's see, where is it here? So many times, and this is a long time ago, of course, that this lady originally, she self-published the book because it was rejected so many times. And John Grisham, John Grisham, thriller writer, that sort of thing. His first novel, A Time to Kill, was rejected by 12 publishers and 16 agents before he got started out. So if you are going to be rejected, ladies and gentlemen, you are in good company, I suppose. And this is, of course, I'll be mentioning self-publishing in a moment, but if you're sending your stuff out to traditional publishers, you might sometimes get a form letter back, just like you would for a job application and things like that. I know once I got a form letter back from a publisher years and years ago that thanked me for sending in my novel, and unfortunately they weren't able to publish it. It said it was a form letter, of course, but it was one that, again, I used to take it to some of my writing classes at the universities, because I had never sent them my novel. I had sent them a letter saying, I see that you're accepting submissions. Would you be interested? I think I just sent them a cover letter without even a synopsis. and then they'd sent me a nice letter back saying, thank you for sending, unfortunately, we didn't like your manuscript, which I hadn't sent them. So sometimes you may just get a form letter and they may not have even looked at what you've sent in. But having said that, I have also had what I would probably describe as creative rejection, where I have received a very nice letter back. And sometimes it's been with the whole manuscript, sometimes it's been with sample chapters where the editors or the people at the publishers have made all these lovely notes and suggestions in the margin. And some of them have been for books that I've subsequently been published by some other publisher or myself, and I've had great tips and advice from people for free as a result of that. So that was great as well. These days, of course, we are able to self-publish much more than we used to be able to. Amazon and self-publishing things was around when I first started doing this 20 years ago. But before that, I suppose if you self-published a book, you would be probably hiring an editor and a book designer and having books printed by a local printer and things like that, and then hawking your book around almost not quite door to door, but not much different to that, and doing a lot of trade fairs and Christmas events and things like that in the past. It's much different now, as I'm sure a lot. I don't think I need to tell any of you this really about the options that there are available with things like Amazon, of course, for ebooks and for print books, Kobo, of course, for ebooks, and Smashwords for ebooks and everything. And yes, there is traditional publishing out there still, and you can certainly send your book into traditional publishers, but it does take a while. And if you want to get your book out there in the world, and really just to test the waters sometimes, say, well, is anybody actually going to be interested in this book? Is anybody going to buy it? Is it worthwhile me pursuing this? You can put it out onto Amazon or one of the other sites and test the waters, as it were, really. Which is what I did with the one about the parallel universe. Well, all the writer's guides I self-publish, and the one about the parallel universe, I did that one myself, that series, and this new one about the Civil War, I'm doing that one myself as well. Now, you still have to make sure the book is ready, of course, even if you're self-publishing, as I'm sure, again, some of you will know. It still has to be properly edited and everything, and still has to look right and everything. With my book about the parallel universe, I made use of a website called Self-Pub Book Covers, which has templates of different covers that you can use for your books and things. Not particularly ideal for the sort of books I was doing for the age range I was doing for sort of teenagers. But the genre was there, though, because there was a lot of science fiction and fantasy and things like that. So there are sites like that. My Civil War books, which are coming out next year, that's the covers. I've put the covers of those on Facebook and Twitter and things like that and things. So the covers of those have been done. So I've actually had an artist who's done those for me for that. For Amazon, of course, as we know, Amazon is not just for ebooks. They will do print books as well, of course. And I'm sure for those of you who aren't familiar with print on demand, what print on demand is, if someone orders one book, because I mentioned earlier, in the old days when we used to have we'd have to go and engage the services of a printer, and probably you'd have to print a certain amount of books to get a discount and things like that. These days, if I've got a book on Amazon and somebody wants one copy of my novel, they will print one copy of that novel and send it out to the buyer, as well as so I have print books and ebooks on Amazon if I've self-published them myself. And before all this nonsense started with this lovely virus, of course, I was doing quite a few in-person events, and so I would order and again, I can't remember what the discount is, but there is a discount for the author from Amazon for the books that you can order your own copies for things like that, for events, because I used to do I used to do the Calgary Comic Expo. I did that for about 7 years in a row, and I used to do some Christmas fairs and things like that. And I needed paperback copies of the books for that. And I've still got a closet upstairs full of them, of course, because I haven't been able to do any in-person events for a while because of, how the world is these days. On Amazon and other sites, there are guidelines for the formatting and things that if you're going to self-publish a book, as you probably all know, there's because it's obviously a slightly different format, or maybe it's a majorly different format for ebooks and print books, but there are also people out there who will do that for you. I know when I did my first writer's guide, I studied the formatting guide for ebooks and things on Amazon, and it took me a long time to make sense of it because it was very technical and I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. But they did have you are able to preview the book before you hit the button. And the beauty of it, of course, with things like Amazon and a lot, especially with ebooks or even with the print version, I suppose, because you're in control of it as a self-publisher. If you decide, well, I don't really like this. I don't really like the way that the font for the chapter headings in my book. You can change that and upload a new version, of course, all the time. So you're in control of that, whereas you didn't used to be, I suppose. I should mention literary agents, although because it's part of this writing for publication thing, I've not worked with an agent directly. I've been in touch with them before, and I've talked to agents before, and I've met them and things in person. But you can certainly research them online just as easily as you can research the publishers. There are literary agents who are based locally in the Calgary sort of area for sure that I've met before. So there are people around who can. Who might want to take you on as a client and then try and get your work out to publishers and things. It's going to depend on what your preferences are and the genre that you're in as to whether these agents are going to be suitable for you and things like that. So that's, again, something that you can quite easily look into.